Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today, I will be welcoming the oldest daughter of the Walton family, Judy Norton, who played Mary Ellen Walton. I'm having her on the show today. We are going to chronicle her journey on that show and all the other stuff that happened along the way. She posed for Playboy in 1985. She also is an accomplished skydiver. She also guest starred on The Love Boat, Stargate SG-1, and she's also a singer. She does a lot of things. I'm going to have her on the show today and talk about all that stuff. And it's going to be pretty eclectic and interesting, obviously. And it's going to be spectacular. So yeah, here is my interview with Judy Norton. Hey Judy.
Hey, how'd you know it was me? That was a good guess.
Because when punctuality ensues, that's when I know it's the guest.
Okay.
Welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm pretty hot right now.
Yeah, where are you?
Redding, California.
Redding. It's hot up there, huh?
It's very hot. Yeah, it's pretty hot. But this is a great honor. Thank you for taking the time today.
Oh, you're welcome. You know, hey, we're all shut in. We might as well enjoy ourselves.
Yeah. So, going back in time, you were a child actor, obviously. At what age did you discover acting and start gravitating toward it?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, my mom had been an acrobat growing up, so she had sort of experienced, she and her brother had this hand-to-hand balancing act that my grandfather had basically taught them from the time they could, not even walk. She used to say that he put her on her hands at the same time she was learning to walk on her feet.
Yeah.
So she had done what the equivalent of sort of like vaudeville in England growing up. And so she'd always had a fascination with Hollywood and the entertainment industry, and from the time growing up during the war and watching the, kind of the movies through the 40s and stuff, she always wanted to come to Hollywood. And so when she and my father married, my father was from Canada, so, she kind of convinced him to move from Canada down to the U.S. And so I think that, that was sort of the driving force from the time me and my brother and sister were all very young, and she then started singing. She was working with a voice teacher and started singing professionally, and he had these little sort of musical theater, did little recitals and stuff with children. And so from a very early age, I remember doing these little recital things and taking dance classes. And so, I'm not even sure how old I was, when I started that, maybe 4 or 5 years old. I seem to remember I was about 6 maybe when I started actually kind of acting and starting to do some commercials and background work, and did a children's theater production on weekends for a year when I was, probably maybe 7 or 8. So just kind of always, and it was just something that I really enjoyed, and it was just kind of fun for me. So there was never really a point where I went, it wasn't a matter of me telling my parents that I wanted to do it and talking them into it. It was sort of something that they, kind of enrolled me in these classes and did these different things, and I was having so much fun that I just, I wanted to do it. So, and then as I started doing more and more work, there was, I guess, there were points where I had to kind of determine if it's something that I wanted to pursue as an adult. But, and I went back and forth on that. at times.
Yeah. What kind of dancing did you do?
I kind of did a variety of different, ballet classes, probably the most, but also some tap and some jazz, and so kind of ran the gamut as a kid.
Yeah.
But I didn't really pursue the dance for some reason. That didn't appeal to me in the same way that the acting and the singing did.
Mm-hmm. Did you do school plays and community theater?
Not really, because the schools didn't do a whole lot of stuff. I guess there was drama classes or whatever. I don't remember doing much in school, but I did when I was 10. I auditioned for a theater company, it was kind of more than community theater, I think, because most of the people connected with it were pursuing acting careers, as far as I know.
Right.
But it could have been more just community theater. But the teacher who ran it was also an actor. He, if you ever heard of a show called Petticoat Junction.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was the boyfriend of one of the sisters, Jonathan Daly. And so he was the one that kind of ran this company. And so I had auditioned for this production of Wait Until Dark, and I didn't get it, but for somehow Jonathan, I don't know whether he was also there or connected with that one, or he heard, or somebody told, anyway, he was doing production of Wait Until Dark as well, and so he ended up going, I want you to do my production. So I ended up doing that production, and then Jonathan had this theater company, and basically it was classes, he had regular sort of acting workshop classes, and then he would write plays for the people in the company, and to sort of, I guess, stretch them in different ways, different types of characters. So I started working with that repertory theater company from the time I was like 10, and I was with them until, and we usually do, I don't know, a couple productions a year, or something like that, maybe more. I don't totally remember. And then I stayed with that until actually I started doing the Waltons, and I kind of couldn't anymore just because of my other work, restraints. Time demands and stuff.
Yeah. IMDb says that you were an uncredited daughter in the Rod Taylor movie Hotel.
Yeah. There's the whole sort of climactic scene of that movie where there's like an elevator that's been malfunctioning, and then finally at the end it actually stops. There's a whole instant with the elevator. Well, I was the kid in the elevator.
Yeah, that was just a day shoot.
Actually, it was a few days, surprisingly. Because movies just have much slower schedule, and there was I guess also because there was a point prior where in one of the hotel lobbies, like outside the elevator, there was a shot of me with the woman who played my mom, like standing waiting for the elevator. So they shot that separately from the actual rigged elevator, because then they had, sort of like the stunt elevator that was rigged so that they could, drop it, like a foot with us all in it, and then they could also rig all the stuff of us being rescued from the elevator, and they had two elevators side by side, and they did all the stuff of pulling us all out of the elevator and things like that. So I just remember being on the set, and I remember things like my mom took me, and there was some big names in that film, and I was a kid, so I didn't know who anybody was, but I remember walking through the set at one point, and my mom was like, that's Myrna Lobron, and I was like, I had no idea who she was, or that Michael Rennie, who played the Thin Man, she knew who all these people were, and he would sit and play Old Maid with me, which as a kid I didn't think anything of, but then as an adult I'm like, oh my goodness, here's this like big star who was willing to sit around and play Old Maid with a kid,
Yeah.
So it was great experience,
Yeah, it's Carl Malden and Melvin Douglas is in it too. I mean, that's pretty big.
Yeah.
And in those days, there was no digital. You were shooting on film.
Absolutely, yeah.
You did an episode of the Felony Squad after.
I did, yeah. James Best played my father from Dukes of Hazzard, and I mean, he had a big career, but, that's kind of probably how people remember the most funny. When you do a series, that becomes, the thing that people pin you to, kind of like me. I've done a lot of other work, but people aren't familiar with much of anything beyond the Waltons. And, and I mean, that was fun. Again, I was young, so I was like maybe 9 or 10, and I developed a huge crush on Dennis Cole, who played, one of the detectives. And, like, oh, he's so cute. He had this smile. And it was probably one of the old, I've had a stunt double once or twice, but there was a whole sequence where I was supposed to, where I get rescued off this boat that my dad's gotten out. He's escaped from prison, and he is trying to run away with me, and they come and rescue me and stuff. But not because my dad's bad, mean or to me, but just, because he's an escaped convict. But so we were shooting down in this just like really gross sort of area down near where the Queen Mary is and stuff like that, someplace down there where the water, a lot of industrial ships and areas and stuff, so the water was really gross. And so they were supposed to, someone comes and gets me and takes me into the water to get me off the boat and rescue me. And so I had this stunt double who was a little person, and it's funny because she was married to the guy who played Cousin It in the Anderson family.
Felix. Yeah, I know Felix.
Felix, yeah. So he was married to him, and she was my stunt double, and and I was just as glad to not have to get into that really gross, disgusting water.
Small, funny world, yeah.
Yeah, so these random things that sort of out to me about working on these different things,
Yeah. Did you do any commercials?
You sort of, yeah. I did some background work in commercials, and I remember the first sort of professional TV thing I did was a commercial. It was a Hostess Twinkie commercial, and we shot at Griffith Park, and there was this merry-go-round, and so we were all riding this merry-go-round, which I just thought was great fun. And at one point, they needed a couple of kids to run by the camera, so that was like more of a featured role, and so they asked me to do that, and I was just upset because I wanted to ride the merry-go-round. I'm like, I don't care about running past the camera. So my priorities were a little, out of whack at that point. I wasn't so worried about getting camera time.
Yeah. That was for Hostess?
Yeah. That was a Hostess Twinkie commercial, and I think I did a Colgate toothpaste commercial and something else. I don't remember what else. I didn't do a lot of commercials. For some reason, I've never been real commercial material. I've done spokes work, but not so much. I don't know. I guess I just don't sincerely. I don't look like I'm sincere enough when I'm trying to sell soap or something. I know I have actors friends who are just. They're so good. They do tons of commercials, and they're so believable as the mom or whatever. And I don't know why. They just never look at me and go, "Oh yeah, I want you selling my soap."
Yeah, Bill Cosby wasn't convincing when he did the new Coke commercial. You could tell he didn't like the taste. Yeah, you could tell he didn't like the taste. How did the Waltons come into your life?
Since I had already kind of been doing, various different little television things and theater and stuff, and had an agent, so I used to audition for a lot of stuff, and was close on some things that I didn't get, and I see the same. There was a handful of young actresses around my age that I used to see at auditions all the time, and it was always kind of like, oh shoot, so and so got that one, and so and so got that one. But So it was just, initially just another audition. And, but, I mean, some roles you relate to better than others. Mm-hmm. And having, as a kid, not only had I done some dance, but I also did a lot of, I enjoyed sports and stuff like that. And I mean, I wasn't doing anything, at that age, 13, it's not like I was seriously into sports, but, I loved sports at school. I loved, playing, on teams and stuff. And, so the whole tomboy thing was like really easy for me.
Right.
It's sort of, I related to that. And so it was just, it just kind of sat in my wheelhouse, that particular role in audition. And they also, because they auditioned for the homecoming, when we did that Christmas, because that's what it really was. Initially, it was just an audition for this CBS Christmas movie. And because it wasn't originally designed to be a series. And so there was a scene in the homecoming where we're in the barn and we're cracking walnuts, and Mary Ellen's kind of going off on a tangent and, in a huff and, carrying on and being overly dramatic. And so that was the scene that we auditioned with, and they had a lot of other actors there, and what they did was they brought a bunch of kids in at the same time. So when I went into audition, they brought 6 or 7 of us in, so they had an actor auditioning for each of the children at the same time.
Yeah.
So that we could have that dynamic when we did the audition. And, because it was a scene that really sort of highlighted Mary Ellen, I felt like I was at an advantage because I really had something to dig my teeth into for the audition. And so, obviously it went well, and then I was called back again, and they did a similar thing where I went in and read with, the same scene with a group of actors, and then they did something which never happens, which was that they called us back again, and there was only 6 of us that time, and they basically brought 6 of us into the room and said, I don't know whether they wanted to see us all together or what the deal was, but they basically said, you are the ones that we want to have do this. So, that like never happens where they bring you in and tell you they want you, that they're going to hire you.
Yeah.
So that was kind of cool. And so we spent a month filming the homecoming. And then we spent the last week up in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, shooting all the snow sequences. And then during that time, we started hearing rumors that the producers were talking about maybe turning it into a series. And, and indeed they did. So by the beginning of, I think, January or February, they had put us all on hold. They negotiated contracts and were holding us until, I guess, they got the green light. And then we started production probably in June, because I actually was able to attend my junior high graduation. Mm-hmm. So, which would have been in, mid-June or something. Yeah. And then we started right after that.
Wow. And when the show took off and became huge, did anyone sit you down and tell you that you needed to look at the success objectively and not take yourself seriously?
No. I got very little good advice, and my parents didn't really know a lot about how the industry ran or worked or or things like that. So I think that some of these, I definitely, there were the good advice I got along the way, I think sometimes came more from some of the adult actors that I worked with. Probably more Will and Ellen. Will Gear, who played the grandfather, really appreciated the opportunity because he'd gone through, being blacklisted in the McCarthy era and, not being able to work for years. And so he was always trying to, just remind everybody that we should appreciate this opportunity, and that, just because you want to work doesn't always mean you can. So it's sort of like when you have work, appreciate it. And that always stuck with me. And he was very professional, as was Ellen Corby, and so they were really good sort of mentors and role models, and and you watch other people, and and so there were some good examples and some bad examples, and I at times I followed the good examples, and at times I followed the bad examples, and kind of sorted it all out. Probably.
Yeah.
By the time I was getting later in my teens,
Yeah. During those 10 years, did you ever try to leave the show?
No, I always did appreciate the work, and I did, take time, periodically to just check in with myself and go, hey, I'm lucky, I really appreciate this, and sometimes I'd walk out of the sound stage, to head home and go, wow, I'm so lucky that I get to do this, Yeah. And, and most of the time I did feel like that. There were times when, when you do something like that for, the series, the 9 years of the series, sometimes it can feel repetitive. You're like, how many times have I done this scene? How many times have I sat at the kitchen table? Or, why don't I, and you can start feeling like, gosh, it would be nice to have a day off, or, because your life is difficult to get things done outside of the work during that time, because you can't plan anything, because you never know your real work schedule. It can change at any moment. So just simple things like, trying to schedule a dentist appointment or whatever, you can't, because you have no idea when you're going to be working and when you're not. You don't know when you are going to work on a day, what time it'll be, how long you'll be there. Mm-hmm. So, and at that point, there wasn't a lot of internet. There was no internet stuff. So, even like getting to the bank, you had to go to the bank to get money, or to deposit a check. And, it's like, you'd be like, do I have time to get to the bank during lunch? It was just simple things. So there were times where it was like, I just want a day off. And it was, and sometimes I'd go through a script and go, I'm in this scene, but I really don't do anything. Couldn't, if you wrote me out, I could have the day off. Then, after the series, when I do work, I'd be looking through scripts going, I really think I should be in that scene. I think you should write my character into that scene. I think I should be there. So it switches around. It's very different, being sort of part of a series that is your show, as opposed to going and being a part of something else, and that I didn't have enough sense of at the time. Those were some of the things that I learned after the fact. But I never was like, oh gosh, I can't stand doing this anymore. I want to stop doing this. I always loved. I preferred, when I had episodes where I had something challenging to do or had more to do, as opposed to just sort of, okay, I'm at the table just because they want the whole family here. I'm sitting around and I've got one line and I'm not really engaged in this. And,
Mm-hmm.
So that was always preferable, to really have something to do.
Yeah, because some people, when they're on a series for a long period of time, they feel like an imposter because the public thinks that they're that character in real life. Yeah,
that's true. You absolutely get that. And I still get that, like when I hear from people that are, big fans, and, there's people that, still have a hard time connecting that this isn't real,
Yeah.
Which is always a little odd still, but yeah, that can be challenging at times when people want to talk to the character, and it's, like, okay.
Yeah.
I'll just phone that one in for you, okay?
Yeah. Well, comedic actors, who do voices and stuff, they don't mind doing the voices for the fans, and talking to the fans in that character's voice, But with, like, the classically trained actors and so forth, yeah, they can sometimes have a problem with it, especially when they're trying to have dinner with their family,
Yeah, sure. And you get a whole mix of people also. We have some wonderful fans, but then you have people that just it's kind of like you're a public figure, so, there can be the perception that you are not entitled to any sort of personal privacy in your life because you're a public figure, So, those things are, finding that balance and trying to be able to have your life and be real and not have to put on a facade all the time for people, and yet, I really appreciate, the loyalty of our fans and the fact that people still watch the show all the time, and, and the fact that had the show not been popular, I wouldn't have had that opportunity, continue to do it for 9 years. So it's very much, it's a symbiotic sort of relationship, and, I'm always working to make it as workable on both sides, to let the fans know that they are very much appreciated, but also, when need be, try to draw some boundaries, and hopefully with their understanding,
Absolutely. Now, Little House on the Prairie was on during the same amount of time, and that too was a wholesome family show, but it was kind of a family western without the shoot 'em up and bang bang and all that stuff. But did you guys feel rivaled by that show in any way in terms of like storylines and stuff?
Well, I always considered them a copycat because we were on first. It's like, oh, you guys decided to copy the. Let's do a family show because the love was successful. But it's funny because people confuse the shows all the time, and yet the similarity is that they were both family shows, but totally different eras. And I guess there may have been some similar storylines. I didn't watch their show that much. I watched it enough to appreciate it, and I know a lot of that cast, not necessarily real well, but some of them better than others, and but I would constantly get people going, oh yeah, you were on Little House on the Prairie, or were you the one that went blind?
Yeah.
Like, no, wrong show. Or what was Michael Landon like to work with? Wrong show. And I remember talking with I don't particularly know Melissa Gilbert, but I was chatting with her briefly at one point, and I went, hey, we get that all the time about people thinking that, I was on Little House, and she said the same thing that she would get, people thinking the Waltons. And so I guess it was very much reciprocal in people just identifying, a family show, so, and picking the wrong one.
Yeah. You guys had a lot of great actors on the show, especially ones who were recurring and went on to become huge, like John Ritter.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was he like?
Yeah. Oh, John was great. He was, a wonderful person, really funny. He and Richard Thomas were great friends.
Yeah.
And real cut up together. They would be trying to crack each other up and, in scenes, but, they were such pros that it's like they could be doing silly things like, pretending to be, to be rabid and foaming at the mouth, and then turn around the next second and do a hugely dramatic scene and, that you totally felt. So it never hindered the work, but they were a lot of fun. So, it was always fun when Ritter was on set. We had a good time. We were sorry to see him go, but I totally understood him, having a very successful comedic career,
Yeah.
And played, such a, a more serious, stalwart reverend.
Yeah. You also had Wilford Brimley and Keith Coogan, and a lot of good people on that show.
Yeah, people like Sissy Spacek did 1 or 2 episodes. Ron Howard did an episode.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan Frakes did a few episodes. We had, and in some cases, I again didn't necessarily, with some of the more sort of classic actors like, Beulah Bondi or Jean Marsh or, that I didn't necessarily know their careers. So, and same thing with some of our directors that we worked with who had these amazing careers in Hollywood, and worked on big films and majors. And I was young enough to not necessarily know their careers. I wish sometimes I was like, oh man, I wish I'd known at the time more about that. I would have really kind of wish I'd sat and picked this person's brain a bit, when I had the opportunity. There was so much more I could have learned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then when Richard Thomas left, do you think it suffered the show a little bit?
I think so. I think the first 5 years were the best. And I think some of that is also because we were young, and I think a lot of the initial charm of the show was this, this family with all these adorable kids, and then we weren't kids anymore, and, so unfortunately they allowed us to grow up, so we didn't have to try and be eternal high school students or something.
Yeah.
So that helped us, and it helped us make the transition from child actor to adult actor. But, the dynamic had to change because, where the show had been really from the viewpoint of John Boy, now it became, more about other, the family in general, and just, I loved working with Richard. He was really good. He was fun, and he was, we had this family dynamic, like, for real. So it was kind of like, oh, my brother's moving away,
Yeah.
Sad,
Yeah. Before I even saw the Waltons, I saw Richard in so many TV movie of the weeks where he was playing this cold, bloodless, sociopathic killer in a couple things. And I was just like, oh my God, he is so bone-chillingly effective as these characters, And then I saw him on the Waltons. I was like, oh, it's that guy, that crazy guy, And I thought to myself, man, if he wasn't so identified as John Boy, he'd be a big movie star doing, actual, theatrical thrillers of what he was doing on TV.
Yeah. Well, and he has taken that and done so much of that type of stuff on stage as well.
Yeah.
He's had quite a prolific Broadway career as well. So, and in fact, he's supposed to be. He was supposed to be. He's going to be doing a tour of To Kill a Mockingbird.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were supposed to, kind of already be in rehearsals and or getting ready to go out on the road. So that's been obviously postponed till who knows. But he never stops working. Good for him, and he's had the opportunity to do a lot of different things. And so I think that was part of he had a 5-year contract, and he honored the 5-year contract. Mm-hmm. And he went, okay, I'm going to move on to other, career challenges. And I totally understand it from, his perspective. It's like, yeah, it was a job. I honored my 5 years, and I'm ready to move on. But I also understand it from, the perspective of the audience going, well, wait a minute,
Yeah.
Not fair. Or the rest of us going, wait a minute. But, it's kind of, some jobs are just a job, and some jobs are so much more, Mm-hmm. And I think he did feel that it was more, but, he was also young enough to, to recognize that, there were opportunities that he needed to take advantage of beyond the Waltons, and again, so that he could potentially have a broader career,
Yeah, but he's done a lot of great work though, and he's been doing theater. He's been doing theater since he could crawl, practically.
Yeah, absolutely. So his parents had a ballet company, mm-hmm. So he was kind of around, professional performance from the time he was born.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite episode?
Oh, that one's always tough. There was different ones stand out for me. The Easter Story is one of my favorites. Mm-hmm. And the Burnout, just because it was so dramatic to do.
Oh yeah, that's my favorite.
Yeah, and then the one we were talking about John Ritter with the book burning. I can never remember the name of the episode, but when their on a rant in town about, Hitler burning books, and they're going to do the same and have a book burning, and,
mm-hmm.
a huge, dramatic scene where they find that they're about to throw a Bible, a German Bible on the fire, and,
Yeah.
So.
Those are some good ones, I have to say.
Yeah. Yeah, and then there were things that were just fun, because I've been a horse person for years, and so anytime I got to go, when I hit a point where Mary Ellen was, as a nurse going up in the back hills and, taking the horse and stuff. So any day I got to go to work and hop on a horse was always fun for me, even if it wasn't a good episode.
Yeah. Well, back then you guys were doing, 26 to 30, episodes a season, right?
We were usually doing 24 to 26 in the beginning, and towards the end, maybe 22 to 24, so yeah.
They can't all be gold. You got to have, a handful of gold ones and then a whole lot of bad ones each season.
Yeah. So fortunately, yeah, I think we had more good than not.
Yeah. During those years, you did Battle of the Network Stars. You got any good stories about that?
I loved doing that. That was because, I'm so competitive. So having, starting off like, oh, this will be fun, and very quickly going, oh, this is for blood. These people are serious, and that works for me because I'm, really competitive. So, some of the things with that were, the first one I did was one of the last ones that Robert Conrad did. And he was really competitive. And so I learned a lot from him, and had some conversations with him. He, they beat us, and the NBC team beat us in the final tug of war. And I remember he sort of gave me tips about, how to win a tug of war after they'd beaten us,
Yeah.
And I remembered that, and I told my team the next 2 times, and we won the next 2 times. So, it was more than just that, but it was a piece of the equation. And, so I remember moments of, things like that with him, or I remember spraining my ankle on the obstacle course and, finishing, and Howard Cosell trying to interview me, and I'm like laying on the ground, in pain. And I said, I never realized, I realized how much pain I was in when I watched the episode when it aired, and I saw that it was Tom Selleck who carried me off the field, and I was like, I didn't even get to appreciate it because I was in so much pain. I was like, what, how did I miss that?
Yeah.
So there were things like that, or breaking my finger in the football, one year, so I usually ended up with a few.
Do you remember who your competition would be as far as girls in your age group at that time?
Well, Randy Oakes was always really competitive. She was, a touch older than me, but, really
chips. Yeah.
Yeah. And Christy McNichol was probably one of the best. She could smoke anybody on the obstacle course,
I met Chris.
I was hated when I had to go up against her.
I met Christy McNichol at a convention that happened the month before COVID hit, and she was the sweetest lady. Oh my God, I cherished meeting her.
Yeah. She was really competitive also, so I wouldn't say that we necessarily talked or bonded, because we both, were very much like game face on, and
yeah.
And, I was also a strategist. I can't help it. I would kind of look at, the whole thing and the numbers and calculate, okay, we got it. But the thing was that I wasn't always diplomatic enough to keep those opinions to myself. Sometimes I just cringe when I hear some of the things I said. It was just me being, blunt about what I saw as the realities, but I went, oh, that sounds so arrogant,
Yeah.
At one point I was talking about, because Greg Harrison was, he did all 3 of the battles that I did. He was on the same team.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a super athlete as well. But he would always end up having to go up against Scott Baio on the obstacle course. And Scott was like Christy McNichol, was just like a monkey. He was through the thing. And he was like this, he was young, and, he was probably only about 18 or something. So he was like, still had that, he could dive under things and, throw his body around or whatever. And so there were points where it's like, okay, here's going to be the finals, and and Greg has to run against Scott. Well, Scott's going to beat Greg. Just realistically, I could look at that and go, Scott's always beaten, whoever he's running up against. So then, but it was cumulative. So the score of the times were combined. So it would be kind of like, okay, I'm running against so and so, and I was like, oh, I know I can beat this person, but I have to beat him by enough to compensate for the fact that Scott's going to beat Greg. So if we're going to win it overall, I have to be fast enough to compensate for Greg losing. And I would say that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, shut up, Judy. You just sound like, you're so full of yourself.
Yeah. Oh my God.
The arrogance of youth.
Yeah. It was such a smaller world back then with the 3 networks. That's so amazing. One year, while you were on hiatus from the Waltons, you did a TV movie of the week called Valentine.
Yeah. It was actually the director of that had directed a number of episodes of the Waltons. So that it was nice to go work with Lee Phillips again. And Mary Martin was in that. And so I had a chance my scenes were with Mary Martin. And I think it was Jack Albertson.
Yeah.
So that was like really a treat. She was just, they were both lovely. And, we shot up in Tahoe. And so it was, it was fun.
Yeah, Ed Danny DeVito during his early Taxi days.
Yeah, although, I didn't work with him. I only worked like maybe 2-3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was, a very specific sequence. And so there was only really about 4 of us in terms of actors working, those days.
Yeah. Do you remember guest starring on The Love Boat?
Oh, yeah. I always wanted to do Love Boat. I love, shows like Love Boat and Fantasy Island, And so it's like, I never got to do Fantasy Island, but I did get to do Love Boat with Robert Fuller. And so, yeah, I didn't get to go on an actual cruise. All the stuff I did was on the soundstage at 20th Century Fox. And, It was fascinating okay, there's the pool on the soundstage, okay. And I remember, because I'd watched it, and there was always, the by the pool scene. And I remember going, I hate wearing body makeup because they would put this, it was called pancake, where they'd get a wet sponge and they, put the makeup on the sponge and then they'd sponge it all over your body so you look like you were tan. Yeah. And they used to do that with us on the Waltons sometimes if, arms were, like Richard was very pale. So if his arms were showing or his neck, they always had to finish off his arms and his neck with this pancake stuff. And I hated because it just felt like you had wet chalk on you. And, you always felt in my hands, I always felt grubby, from having that on it. And so I was like, there's no way I'm going to do some swimsuit scenes and have this stuff put all over me, So I intentionally went out and said, I'm getting a tan. This was back when it was okay to lie around and get a tan,
Mm-hmm.
And so I dedicated time to getting a tan so that I wouldn't have to wear full body makeup. And it worked. I didn't have to.
Yeah, Bruce Bilson directed. I interviewed his son, Danny Bilson, who was a pretty successful TV producer in the 90s.
Oh, wow. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't say that I totally remember him as a director. I mean, that's, certainly nothing bad, so obviously I had a good time and things went well. And I remember having some really difficult dialogue because I had this tongue twister. And I remember it because it was such a tongue twister. And it's something about my shampoo is made by our Syntheco chemical subsidiary.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay. And when I was learning my lines, I had to say it over and over so that I could actually get that combination of syllables out together.
What made you pose for Playboy in 1985?
Well, it was kind of, managers, agents, I've had different representatives who had advised me that, like the whole, because it was just after the Waltons ended, and it was kind of like, oh, you're so typecast, and you were into really the nighttime soap era, with the Dallas and the Dynasty and all the sort of glamour of, the Bob Mackie gowns. And so it was kind of like, I was just getting all that, farm girl, we can't, you're too well known, you're not the right type. And so I had 2 or 3 different representatives go, well, we should do something like Playboy to change your image. And the thing is, I was only in my early 20s, so, it was kind of like I was still naive about the business in many ways, because, you're still very isolated in those days, and doing a show, so it was kind of like, well, these are the people who advised me, and after the third one advised me, I went, well, okay, it wasn't that I was really all that hung up about, having a problem doing it, and I went, well, all right, and they were trying to go, yeah, well, it really helped a lot of actresses, and, blah, 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 and I didn't really investigate the veracity of that remark.
Right.
And at the time, I liked the idea of, after years of wearing overalls and being sort of the farm girl and having this sense that was this image that I had, was that, again, like you said, people thinking who you are in real life. And, I was kind of like, I just had these moments in my early 20s going, well, I want someone to think I'm pretty, and Erin was always the pretty one, and I was always the farm girl. So, so there was a little of that sort of vanity, involved in going, well, I just like someone to think I was pretty. And so the combo of getting all of this advice and kind of going, yeah, well, then maybe people think I'm pretty, and maybe I'd get some other types of roles. And, so I went, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and, it's one of those hindsight things. I'm like, it did nothing. People never stop talking about it, as we see, here we are talking about it, of all the things I've done in my career, but, and it didn't do anything relative to getting work. And, and I kind of thought about it later and went, what was I thinking? It's like, those weren't the roles I wanted to do,
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it's like I've made a career really mostly out of playing really strong, independent, competent women, not necessarily sex symbols.
Yeah.
So, it was my moment of personal vanity going, maybe I could be a sex symbol for half a minute, and then I'm like, oh, I hate this. I don't want to be a sex symbol. I have no interest. It is so not me,
Yeah. Well, at least you tried it. I mean, I've seen the pictures. I think they hold up, even your hair holds up. Your 80s hair.
Oh, I know. Yeah, all of that. I thought, well, I can look back and go, okay, well, once upon a time I didn't have all these wrinkles, and, I was like, and muscle tone. And
Do you remember guest starring on Stargate SG-1?
Loved Stargate. That was fun. Again, because the Waltons, we didn't have action, we didn't have special effects, we didn't have it. It was a really straight ahead show, so it was always, I had fun when I got to do something that maybe involved a little more action or a little more, that was kind of like, wow, I got to go through the Stargate. That was so cool, So I'm a total fan sometimes, and I knew Richard Dean Anderson from having done some celebrity tennis tournaments and stuff that he was at when he was doing General Hospital.
Yeah.
And when he was doing
MacGyver.
MacGyver, exactly. So, I kind of crossed paths with him over the years, and he was one of the exec producers on the show, too. And so I went in and I auditioned, and I had a call back, and, and then I got the call. And then when, and he wasn't at any of the auditions or anything like that, but when I went in to do my wardrobe fitting, I ran across him. He goes, yeah, I saw the the audition tape. I'm like, yeah, let's get Judy in here,
Yeah.
So it was like, so the combo of, having done a good audition and him, because he, I guess, had final approval on casting and stuff. So And so that was fun, and it was a fun character, and the cast was lovely. I loved that director, one of my favorite directors, Martin Wood, that I worked with, and he was really wonderful to work with, and gave really good direction. Very simple, but I was a little worried about it because in the audition there was a point where I did the scene, and then he gave me a piece of direction that I didn't understand. Mm-hmm. Something to do with being raw or real or something, so real it's almost raw, or so raw it's real. I don't know what it was, but, I was like, I didn't quite know what to do with the piece of direction, so I asked him a question about it, and he kind of said the same thing again, and I sort of went, well, I can't ask again, or he'll think I can't take direction, or, it's like, it's not good, be like, I don't understand, it's like, he'll just, okay, next, give me someone who can understand. So I just kind of nodded and went, well, I'll make a choice and I'll try it again, and whatever I did, I guess, worked. So I was a little worried when I went in. I went, oh gosh, maybe we won't be on the same page, and and I'll have trouble, being able to execute what he wants. But when I got on set, his direction was spot on and super easy. It's like, oh, okay, got it, yeah, great, I can do that. So felt very in sync with him.
Mm-hmm. What made you get into writing and directing?
That was sort of I sort of fell into that in an odd way. My former husband, we had met working up in Canada on some theater, and he, just after we were married, he was going to direct a show, a theater production for this company that did musical theater productions, original musical theater productions. And so he went to direct that, and then he called me partway through and said that the artistic team was leaving to start their own company, and that they didn't have their next show. So in 10 or 12 weeks, they were going to need to go into rehearsals for another show, and they didn't have a script yet. So he said, it's being advertised as like a, kind of a country western thing. Do you want to pitch something? And so I came up with an idea, and I wrote the first act of a 3-act show, and he pitched it to the producer, and the producer, said yes. So then he and I put together a proposal to come on board as a writing and directing team for the company, and our proposal was accepted. So it was kind of, there it was. It's like, okay, better finish that script. And so it was a fabulous training ground, because every 10 weeks we had to, write a new show and then direct it. And I sort of, apprenticed under him. And, but it's sort of like what doesn't usually happen with writing is that you don't have a chance to see what's working and what's not. Like if you write for film or television, you don't see it till it's done and you go, oh shoot, I missed the boat there.
Right.
But with theater, it's like everything for 8 years, everything I wrote, I got to see. I got to see it all through rehearsals. I got to see it in front of an audience then, to see how the audience responded, what was working, what wasn't, go back in, make changes. So I really had the opportunity, in terms of a training ground, it was fabulous, to really kind of, actually do it, not just theorize about it. So that was kind of how the writing and directing started, as, in tandem like that. And then after I left that company, then I started working a few years after that with a company out of Texas that I went down to do a theater production. I went down to star in Hello, Dolly, and then I got to talking with the producer down there, and he found out about my history, writing, and directing, and so then he would start commissioning things and going, yeah, I want a show about blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so I would write and direct for him. So it just kind of continued from there, and then, someone recommended me to act in a series up in Canada, and the producer, they were supposed to do 6 episodes, and she didn't have them written yet. She had them outlined, and I said, well, I can help you. So she said, that'd be great. And so I ended up writing a bunch of those episodes and directing them, and so it just kind of rolled from there, you know?
Mm-hmm. You recorded an album called Reflections. I went on YouTube and I saw you do a song in some club a few years ago, and I thought you had a very beautiful voice.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. You know, I'd always wanted to do musical theater, and so I had spent a lot of years studying singing, and when the Waltons ended, one of the first things I did was I ended up getting cast in with Pittsburgh Civic Light Opera for their Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella, and so that sort of started, you know, my opportunities to do musical theater, and so I did, you know, a lot of musical theater, and then that sort of ended up branching again when I was in Texas into, at one point, that producer said, hey, I'm doing this musical review. It's supposed to be Judy Garland and Friends, and he had somebody who did a great Judy Garland. He goes, I want you to be one of her friends, you know, and sing some songs. And I was like, okay. So that was sort of started the straight-up concert stuff. And so then I, you know, started doing concert stuff and eventually, you know, recorded a live kind of cabaret show that I did, and that's what Reflections is. It's, you know, it's sort of, I went, well, you know, that's the easiest way to initially get, you know, a CD done with, let's just record it and then, you know, clean it up and you know, have something, because people are always like, oh, do you have something? I'm like, well, no. I'm like, I should have something. When they say, do you have something?
You write songs?
I do not yet. Even though I've written the book for a lot of musicals, but I did not never wrote the score. I'm actually working with a composer lyricist right now. We're doing a musical about the life of Olympic diver Greg Louganis. Mm-hmm. And so Patrick and I work sometimes with songs. You know, it'll be like, okay, what does this song need to say? So I'll throw out a lot of sample lyrics and go, good, take these concepts and then, you know, make them right. You know, because it's like, I don't worry about rhyming, I don't worry about structure, I'm like, this is just kind of what the song needs to say at this point in the show. And so I've learned more about it from working with him, but I'm also not a strong enough musician at this point. I sort of dabble on, I played a little bit of guitar when I was young, and I sort of picked it back up, and I've just been sort of starting to try and learn piano, but not there yet.
Wow. Do you still skydive?
No, have not done that since I was 4 months pregnant with my son. I thought that was a good time to stop, and, you know, then with a small child, it was just never practical to get out.
Yeah, at one point I wanted to try skydiving, and a friend of mine, who's a skydiver, him and his girlfriend went and did a jump, and she fell into a tree and badly broke her leg, and I was just like, oh, no, I'm not going to try it. And then a few years later, I had a car accident, and I had a broken leg, so no skydiving for me.
Yeah, I was really worried about my ankles, because I originally did it for Circus of the Stars. I was asked to train to do stunts for that. Mm-hmm. That involved skydiving, and, you know, I was kind of like, you know, I've sprained an ankle a few times, maybe, you know, that might, you know, my ankles are not the strongest joint in my body, so I was a little worried about my ankles, and then I got through 6 hours of ground training and went, ankles? I could die doing this, you know, why am I worried about spraining an ankle, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know, because I had to jump for a month in the training, you know, I got past all that initial fear and stuff, and learned how, you know, to control the landings better and all that kind of stuff. So then it just got to be, it's like I got past fear into the fun part. So then I just continued it as a hobby for, you know, 10 years.
Wow, that's phenomenal. So did you have any projects lined up before the pandemic started?
Yeah, I was supposed to be directing a film, but who knows what's going to happen with that now, because, you know, with there's all kinds of protocols now for being able to shoot, and this was going to be, you know, like a low-budget indie film, and so with all the protocols, you know, you can't, they're talking about shorter days, and we would usually shoot 10 to 12-hour days on most of the time anyway. That's kind of, you know, your typical film or television shoot day. if you're not even going into really overtime. And so right now they're kind of saying, well, you got 6 to 8 hour days to try and keep everybody healthy. Don't do those 12, 14-hour days and stuff back to back. So, the producer's like, well, this would be really tough to, we need extra money to be able to properly do the film and adhere to all the protocols. So it's been sort of like, all right, well, I think we just have to kind of wait then, because we can, rather than doing a half-assed job of the film or, start reworking the whole film and compromise the story, it's like, let's just wait. So who knows what will happen, because none of us know how long we're going to be in COVID land.
Yeah, I was getting close to financing my script, and then I had been offered a role that was going to get made two at the same time, and it screwed everything up.
Yeah, I know. I keep kind of going, well, maybe I should look at, writing something that's very, simple. I mean, simple from the standpoint of not much cast, and something that doesn't have to have a lot of locations, and something that could be predominantly outdoors, where people would, not have to be in such tight, proximity, and indoors where, outside you get better ventilation, all that. But I just haven't, nothing's really triggered for me in terms of something I'm dying to write. So, in the meantime, I've just been working on, other things, and I had a script I had to finish, but it's also a big, a bigger thing, with a lot of moving pieces and a lot of locations, including, something that needs to look like China, and so, that, who knows when the producer will be able to really seriously go after funding for that, because I can see, it's got to be hard to go after funding right now when nobody knows what something really needs to cost to do and how long it might be before you can shoot what you want to shoot on the page.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I'm going to indulge your inner tomboy here.
Yeah.
I have a secret silly game that I like to play with guests, and how this works is this is a series of slumber party questions. Nobody wins or loses. We're just having silly fun. And how it works is I ask you the question, you answer it, and then you ask me the exact same question, and I answer it.
Okay.
Judy, are you ticklish?
Yes. Tom, are you ticklish?
Yes, I am baby ticklish. What is your favorite part of the body? And it can be any body part, it don't matter.
That's tough. Eyes?
Yeah, that's a popular one.
Yeah. What is your favorite body part?
The belly button.
Okay.
What color are your toenails painted?
Right now they're not. What color are your toenails painted?
Same here. Au naturel.
Okay.
What would you...
ride horses, so trying to keep nail polish on. They always get rubbed off when I've got riding boots on.
Really? That's interesting. I never wore riding boots, so I don't know if that's common.
Well, I think it is with English riding, because you ride heels down, toes up. Mm-hmm. So my toes more likely to be hitting the top of the boots than it would in regular shoes under regular conditions.
Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What would you say is your best personality trait?
It depends whether you ask me or someone else. Let's see. Optimism.
Optimism. Huh. Yeah.
What is your best character trait?
My sense of empathy, and I have no filter.
Okay.
And then, my favorite question, is there a stinky smell that just makes you gag?
Ooh. Huh. I'm trying to think what there is, but I'm trying to think what it would be. I don't know, probably a dead fish.
A dead fish. That's an interesting one.
How about you? Stinky smell that makes you gag?
Either farts or feet.
Mm.
And when I say that to someone who has kids, that does not affect them at all.
Well, it's funny because I never had trouble really changing my son's diapers, but if I had to change somebody else's kid's diaper,
oh yeah,
horrible. You know,
oh,
I don't know what the difference is, but you know,
I've heard that. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's because you can monitor your own child's diet or something. I don't know.
What have you been feeding those kids?
Exactly. Judy, thank you so much for coming on today, and I hope after all this craziness is over, you get to make that film and get out there and do everything you love, because you're a true Renaissance woman.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I hope yours gets going too, yeah. There will be light at the end of this tunnel. See, I'm optimistic.
Yes, you are. It will be. You have yourself a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, there you have it. Judy Norton. Ain't she a sweetheart? What a nice lady, huh? And she's very talented, and she does many things, wears many hats. Gotta love her. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, add me as a friend on Facebook, join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all the time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes.